The Best of Enemies is based on Osha Gray Davidson's 1996 book, The Best of Enemies, Race and Redemption in the New South. The movie Best of Enemies stars Taraji P. Henson and Sam Rockwell as individuals on extremely different sides of the racial spectrum in 1960s North Carolina. Ann Atwater, a civil rights activist, and C.P. Ellis, a Ku Klux Klan leader, are forced to work together on an education initiative. Ann Atwater, born to a sharecropping family, was a prominent civil rights activist long before her involvement in the story spotlighted by The Best of Enemies. Ann Atwater moved to North Carolina in 1953 after getting married at the age of 14. However, her husband subsequently abandoned her to raise their children alone. I would imagine some of you know the struggles of being a single parent. Picture having that stress magnified in an era that dehumanized and marginalized your very existence, and worse yet, the existence of your children. Ann received aid from housing advocates, which helped her to keep her home after falling behind on rent. Having someone come to her rescue prompted Ann to become involved in housing advocacy. In the mid-1960s, activist Dr. Howard Fuller enlisted Atwater in Operation Breakthrough, which was an organization dedicated to fighting poverty and inequality. Because of her mission to oppose the inconsistencies in how blacks and whites were treated by community aid organizations, Ann eventually became skillful in regard to housing policy. Ann's steadfast community activity ultimately led to her being elected as vice president of the local Democratic Party, and she became the first female deacon in her church. In 1971, Ann was tapped to co-chair a special initiative to solve issues pertaining to the desegregation of schools, which is the focal point of the movie Best of Enemies. Atwater's co-chair could not have been any more profanely opposite than herself than in the form of Claiborne Paul Ellis. Ellis became disillusioned with the notion of the American dream. The strain of taking care of his wife and children, one of whom was blind and mute, led to what he described as the need to blame somebody. To Ellis, it was natural to hate black people. Ellis was ultimately invited to and joined a local Klan group. He became an active member, climbing to the ranks until his final pronouncement as Exalted Cyclops. Ellis attributed the elation of this period to feelings of self-worth and the importance of being a respected member of a group. In 1971, C.P. Ellis was elected as co-chair to a committee on desegregating local schools. His co-chair was, you guessed it, Ann Atwater. However, coincidentally, this was not the first time that they had crossed paths. At one of the city council meetings, Ellis erupted into a racially charged tirade. Atwater lunged at him and tried to stab him, only failing to do so because her friends held her back. Following the Supreme Court ruling to desegregate schools, communities like Durham wrestled with how to comply with the court decree in a community that strongly opposed desegregation. So as a result, the local labor union asked Atwater and Ellis to bring their ideas and lead the meeting. In the beginning, the pair hated each other, but something happened. It was the same thing that happens when people open their minds and listen to each other. Atwater and Ellis discovered that they were more similar than they were different. They both came up poor, and they both cared deeply about the educations of their children. Ellis came to understand that civil rights and desegregation was in the best interest of everyone, and that poverty-stricken black communities were not to blame for white communities and poverty. Instead, they should help each other. According to Davidson's book, on which the movie is based, Atwater and Ellis's 2-week partnership ended with Atwater and Ellis presenting an inventory of fair suggestions to the board, with the goal of creating a system to hear the concerns of students and improve curriculum. What was even more shocking was that Ellis renounced his membership in the KKK by publicly tearing up his membership card, which led to death threats and disdain by members of his own community. Atwater and Ellis went from hating each other to becoming friends, and continued to be for decades. Atwater persisted in her civil rights work, while Ellis became notorious in labor and union organizations. Ellis died in 2005 and Atwater in 2016. And that is the real story of how The Best of Enemies became the best of friends. The Best of Enemies hits theaters April 5th, 2019. Subscribe below for more upcoming Black History Speaks videos. Also, share with a young person who you think can take pride in knowing this significant piece of American history. Thank you for your time. Please subscribe, like, and share, And remember, Black history doesn't have to be forgotten. It's up to us to make Black history speak now.